Back in our game, I've added a couple UI elements. Under the canvas, I had right-clicked and added UI text, and it added a text box to my UI. Let's pop into my 2D view here and see where I position them. So I have my text time that I can shift around and position, and I have my score text, which I'll be talking about in the next video. And I've just positioned these kind of roughly where I want them based off that background grid, and now I can access their components in different ways. For now, let's think about this time manager. And to begin, we'll just see what it does. In the top corner, time remaining, it counts down the decimal value in seconds, how much time has elapsed in the game. The idea here being that I have a certain amount of time to complete the functionality or to complete the objectives in this level before I lose. And something that I've managed to generalize here is the total time is something I can just change from the Unity editor. If I make it down to like 5 seconds, for example, I should see that it starts at 5 seconds and automatically starts counting in real time. This is independent of the frame rate. And once it hits 0, I see game over appear. And I could trigger a game over menu. I could, reset the level or something. But I'm just having that little debug printout for now. So what have I done with this time? Well, the initial text says time remaining. And actually, notice something along with me here. The message kind of looks a little bit warped at the start because I have different capitalization here. What I might do is actually set this text to nothing to begin, because I set the text through my script, so it just appears in the right state. Maybe that looks a little bit better, although it does create the awkwardness of not seeing anything in my editor. That's something that you can customize for yourself. Also, maybe you don't like that there's a clear background. You could experiment with adding in something like a panel that allows you to have those backgrounds alongside the text a little more easily. For now, I'm happy with that clear background. That works for me at this point in my prototype design. So what have I done? Well, I've created this timer manager that is attached to this text object. Let's pop it open and see what's going on inside of it. I've once again used this idea of a coroutine, which we looked at a little bit earlier. It allows me to have some kind of functionality built in that's independent and being processed in parallel with our normal update functionality. So I can be precise on time. Maybe if you're a speedrunner, you really care about time being exactly mapped out to the system time. This is a strategy you could use. I'm sure there's many others you could think of that would do the same type of functionality. So what I've done is I've allowed for a total time to be set as well as a text object to be connected. And I've connected my text time to this script because this is the object I want to update the information in. Then I've also set a float for remaining time where I can keep track of how much time is left before we hit 0. And I've also set up another wait for seconds object called incrementer. That updates, or it's set to update every 10th of a second. I could change this to updating much less often or much more often depending on how much information I wanted the player to see. Of course, if I did 0.01, it would update every 100th of a second, which would be a little less processor efficient, but you'd see more information on the screen. When I start the script up, I set my remaining time to the total time I set in Unity, and I start my coroutine run timer. And what this is going to do is immediately yield to the incrementer, meaning that it's not going to do anything else underneath it until the incrementer's time has elapsed. So it's going to wait 0.1 seconds of real time before doing everything else after it. Once that time is up, it's going to update time, which subtracts 0.1 from the remaining time. And something that I do here is I run a little piece of functionality called system.math.round, wherein I take my remaining time and I round it to 1 decimal place, because that's all I want the player to see. I have to cast it to a float because it comes in a double, so I'm just going to make sure it's a float to be consistent. And then what I do here is access my UI. This UI object text, which I needed to import or use the UI engine.ui for. If you type this in, you might have to click on import this library to run it. I just access that object and go .text, and I can update the text directly. I'm going to set it to time remaining plus whatever the new value of remaining time is. Perfect. So I update my time and I say, if it's greater than 0, I'm going to restart my coroutine. Run timer. I'm going to run this all again if I'm not at 0. Otherwise, if I have reached 0 or less, I'm just going to hit game over. This will not continue looping. Basically what I've done here is I've created a loop that only loops every 0.1 seconds. So it's like a special set apart from the update type loop that's based off of system time rather than number of for loop iterations or number of increments in the update. So it's just a different way of processing the logic that's system time related. And of course, I just debug to the screen game over when I hit there, and all this together just runs on this text object that exists in the world. And it is updating itself based off of this coroutine that's running. And to see it one more time, when we start, every 0.1 seconds that coroutine is restarted, it waits to update, and when it hits 0, it ends. No more coroutines being run, game over is triggered. There's a nice little strategy for customizing an in-game timer using coroutines.